Hello everyone, welcome back. In today's video, we got a couple of things to discuss, including a couple of signings, a couple of training camp cuts, waivers have started, so we've got a couple of pieces of waiver news, a couple of PTO updates. Cory Schneider has retired from the NHL, and we've got a couple of trade rumors involving the Canucks, the Bolts, the Sens, and the Leafs. So we'll get to all of that coming up right now. Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here at the N10 Talking Channel. We've got a lot of things to discuss today, so we're going to kick things off by discussing a couple of signings that have happened over the past couple of days. We're going to start with the Philadelphia Flyers. As the Philadelphia Flyers have signed goaltender prospect Carson Brannstrom to a 3-year ELC with an AAV of $913,000, and a deal will be at the start of the upcoming season. Now, Brannstrom was a second-round pick back in this past year's draft, in the 2023 draft. He looks like a really good goaltending prospect, was one of the better goalies in this year's draft class. Last year, played in the WHL, putting up a 3.08 goals against average and a 900 save percentage in over 40 games. So he looks like a decent prospect. Flyers already have a lot of decent goaltenders. They have Carter Hart, they have Sam Ersson, they have Sandstrom, they have Peterson. They have a couple of other guys as well. So Bjarnsson's really low in the depth chart right now, so he's, I think, already been returned to the WHL. He's going back to the WHL. He's going to go continue to develop in juniors. Goaltenders usually take a little bit longer to develop too, so I wouldn't be surprised if he spent the next couple of years in the WHL, then maybe a couple of years in the AHL, probably 3 to 4 years away from competing for like an NHL roster spot. But when he's ready to compete for an NHL roster spot, I definitely think he'll most likely be a solid either 1B goaltender or 1A goaltender in the NHL. He's definitely going to be at least a tandem goaltender, if not a starter. So definitely, it was a really good pickup for the Flyers. I think that second-round pick was used wisely. I think Brannstrom getting his ELC is really, really good. And hopefully, in the not-too-distant future, Brannstrom can challenge guys like Ersson and Hart for the goaltending roles in Philadelphia. Probably going to take a couple of years' time, but I think in time, Brannstrom could definitely be a solid NHL goaltender for Philadelphia Flyers. So that was a solid move, in my opinion, for the Flyers to sign him. The Minnesota Wild signed 2 players yesterday, significant ones, both to big long-term contract extensions. First, Matt Zuccarello signs a 2-year contract extension with the Minnesota Wild with an AAV of $4.125 million, and they'll begin at the start of next season. This is a really good deal, in my opinion, for Zuccarello and for the Wild. Zuccarello's coming off a multi-year deal with an AAV of $6 million, so the Wild get a little bit of cap savings from Zuccarello. I thought the way Zuccarello had been playing the past couple of years, he's had career seasons the past 2 seasons. He's been a top-line player, playing consistently with Kaprizov, who he has fantastic chemistry with. I thought he would have gotten a little bit more, in my opinion. Probably would have gotten at least back around $6 million, if not $7 million, on the open market. So to see him go back to Minnesota for only $4.1 million, I think it was fantastic. I know I've seen some people who have not really liked the contract, but in my opinion, I don't have any problem with it. Zuccarello's a solid top 6 forward. He can play really well with Kaprizov. It's only $4 million, which is actually a paid cut from a $6 million AAV from this year. All in all, Zuccarello has a really fantastic deal, in my opinion. The one I didn't really like was the other one they signed. They signed Marcus Foligno, who's a solid middle 6 winger, to a 4-year contract extension with an AAV of $4 million. Now, that's the one that was a bit rich, in my opinion, for Foligno. I thought maybe a 1 to 2, maybe 3-year deal would have been better for Foligno at around the same sort of a cap hit he had, which was around $3 million. I know he's a really big piece of that middle 6. He can play third and second line minutes. I know he's a really good physical forward and someone that's not easy to come by, but I still think $4 million for the next 4 years, especially when Foligno's already over 30, is a little bit rich in my opinion. So I don't really like that one as much as I do Zuccarello, but Foligno did fit well with the Wild. He brings an element to the Wild that they don't really have, so I can see why they would want to keep him. I see why they overpaid him a little bit, but in my eyes, I think a 1 to 2 year deal at around the $3 million AAV would have been more ideal for the Wild. But that is what it is. I mean, they still have the Parisi and Suter buyout, so cap space isn't easy for them to come by. So I thought Foligno getting extended closer to $3 million would have been ideal, but they winded up signing him. I still like Foligno with the Wild. He's a really good middle 6 forward, and he really helps. He's been playing the past couple of years with Eric Sinek on the second pair at some point, so I can definitely see why they wanted to keep him. He's a really rough and tumble forward, but last year he didn't really have the best of points totals, and in my eyes, I think that was a little bit of an overpayment. But they do keep him for 4 years at $4 million, so definitely going to be interesting to see how the Wild do with these two contracts. I really like the Zuccarello one. I just think the Foligno one was a bit of an overpayment. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on what you think about those two contracts in Minnesota. And the other one was a significant one that also involves a captain. And that's that the Calgary Flames and Mikael Backlund, who a lot of reporters were saying an extension was coming close, a deal was going to get done in the not-too-distant future. The deal did get done. The Calgary Flames signed Mikael Backlund to a 2-year contract extension with an AAV of $4.5 million, and then promptly announced that Backlund would be the new captain of the Calgary Flames. Now, the Flames really did believe that they needed a captain this upcoming season. They needed someone to lead that locker room. Backlund is the perfect guy. He's been the leader on and off the ice the past couple of years. Everyone in the Calgary Flames organization apparently seems to think that Backlund's captain, so that seems like an extremely great option there for the Flames. I definitely did think that Backlund was going to be named captain if they could get an extension done. There was also some talk that Rasmus Andersson might be named captain if Backlund couldn't get the extension done, but they were able to get the extension done. So Backlund at 2 years of $4.5 million, I think is a good value for him. He just put up a career season, putting up 19 goals and 56 points in 82 games. If he can continue this point pace over the next 3 years, at least hit the 40, if not the 50 or 60 point plateau as like a second, third line center in Calgary, I think he'll be a fantastic addition for the Flames at a $4.5 million cap hit. I think that works for Backlund. He takes a little bit of a pay cut off of his current $5.35 million AAV deal, so it's a little bit of a pay cut for Backlund, but at $4.5 million, I think as a second, third line center in Calgary, Backlund will be fantastic. He's now their new captain, so that's now down to only the 6 teams who don't have a captain. The Flames have now also named a captain, so I think it was the right move to name a captain for the Calgary. It's just going to be interesting to see if it was going to be Rasmus Andersson or if they were able to get an extension done and it was Backlund, and they did get an extension done, so Backlund is going to be named captain. So that's a solid deal in my opinion. 2 years, $4.5 million. I think Backlund is completely worth that. As a second or third line center, that's a fantastic deal. And the Flames now have the new captain. Part of the Backlund contract, he also gets a no-trade clause up until the January 1st of 2026, which is the last half of his contract, where he has a 15-team no-trade list. So definitely, he's got trade protection. He's signed for the next 3 years if you include this year. Backlund's going to be a Flame for the next couple of years, and he's going to be the Flames captain. So a really good deal in my opinion. I think Backlund's worth it. So those were the 4 signings that have happened over the past couple of days. Solid extension for Zuccarello. Not extension that I think is overly great in Foligno, but it's a decent extension. Backlund signs a 2-year extension and is named captain, and then the Flyers sign prospect goalie Carson Bjarnason. And those are all really fantastic deals in my opinion. So next we go over to a couple of training camp cuts, waiver updates, and PTO updates. There have been a lot of training camp cuts, PTO cuts, and waiver cuts over the past couple of days. The waiver wire started again on Thursday, so we've had a couple of pieces of waiver news. On top of that, we've also had a couple of players who were released off of their PTOs, and some players who were sent to the minors or to juniors who did not need waivers. So we'll go through a list of players who did not need waivers and have been sent to either the minors or juniors. I mean, there was a ton of players, so I'm just going to go over some of the more significant names here. The Anaheim Ducks sent forwards Hvitsen and Mijatovic, who were recent draft picks, to the WHL, while they sent Petrie and Terrence to the OHL. The Arizona Coyotes signed Julian Lutz to the USHL. The Buffalo Sabres signed Mats Lindgren to the WHL, while they sent Alexander Kisakov and Oliver Nadeau to the AHL. The Calgary Flames sent Ilya Nikolaev, Alex Gallant, Parker Bell, and William Stromgren to the AHL, while also sending Etienne Morin, who was a recent draft pick, to the QMJHL. The Colorado Avalanche sent Matt Steinberg, Tanner Kiro, and Giovanni Fairbrother all to the AHL. The Columbus Blue Jackets sent Samuel Kanazko, as well as Luca Del Bel Beluz, all Julian Bjorkvik-Holm, and Tyler Engel to the AHL. The Edmonton Oilers signed Matvei Petrov, Julian Grube, Jake Chiasson, Carl Berglund, and Tyler Tullio to the AHL. Minnesota Wild sent Simon Johansson, Pavel Novak, and Kyle Masters to the AHL. The Nashville Predators sent Tyler Molendijk and Kalen Lind to the WHL, while sending Dylan McKinnon to the QMJHL. New Jersey Devils sent Tyler Brennan to the AHL, as well as Tobias Violin and Robbie Russo. The New York Islanders sent Isaiah George to the OHL while sending Tristan Lennox, Blake Jenkins, Cole Bardreau, and Jacob Kubalik to the AHL. The New York Rangers sent Nicholas Broulard, as well as Ryder Korzak and Bobby Trevangano to the AHL. The Ottawa Senators sent Yorion Donovan, as well as Thomas Hamara to the OHL, and then sent Marilainen, Sabrango, and Turi to the AHL. The Philadelphia Flyers sent Denver Barkey, as well as Oliver Bonk to the OHL. Recently signed prospect Carson Bjornsson to the WHL, and then Zayd Wisdom and Ethan Sampson to the AHL. The Pittsburgh Penguins sent Jesper Blomqvist to the AHL and sent Braden Yeager to the WHL. The San Jose Sharks sent Luca Cagnoni to the WHL, as well as Mason Bupit. The Seattle Kraken sent Luka Dragicevic and Jager Furcus to the WHL. They sent David Goyette, Carson Raykopf, Edward Schale, and Ty Nelson to the OHL. And they sent Jacob Melanson, Ryan Winterton, Ville Ottavainen, and Tucker Robertson to the AHL. St. Louis Blues sent Quentin Burns to the OHL while sending Mikhail Abrahamov, Hunter Skinner, Vadim Zherenko, Tanner Dickinson, and Marc-Andre Godet to the AHL. The Tampa Bay Lightning sent Ethan Gauthier to the QMJHL. The Vegas Golden Knights sent Mason Primo to the AHL, as well as Lucas Cormier, Daniel Cheka, and Jacob Brabenak, while sending Matthias Sapovaliev to the OHL. The Washington Capitals assigned Andrew Cristal to the WHL, and the Winnipeg Jets assigned goaltender DiVincentis to the OHL, while they sent forward Levis to the WHL. So, like I said, long list of good young players who are sending back to the juniors or being given back to the AHL. These guys all didn't need waivers. They were not PTO players, so there was a ton of players there. These are more significant names. There were also some other guys who were released from amateur tryouts who were lower-end prospects who were sent back to juniors or AHL, so definitely. There was other players there as well, but those were some of the more significant names that I found over the past 4 days that have been sent down to the minors. Now, last one when we talked, there were 3 players who had been released from their PTOs, including Sacramento Leinen, Cam Hillis, and Nathan Schnarr. Well, since then, we've had a handful more of players who wound up not being able to earn a two-way contract from their PTO. On September 26th, the Arizona Coyotes released Ryan Dzingel and Ollie Levy from their contracts. I thought both of them stood a decent chance to possibly get a PTO, so I'm a little bit surprised, especially in this case of Dzingel, as he's a solid bottom six forward. But not overly shocked that those two wound up not getting NHL deals. On September 27th, prospect goaltender Brendan Halverson was released from his PTO with the Dallas Stars. Not too shocked there. Halverson was an AHL at best goaltender, so I'm not overly shocked that he was released. September 28th, the Arizona Coyotes released Peter Deliberator. Once again, AHL player, not overly shocked that he was released. And then just yesterday, there was a handful more players who were released from their PTOs. Adam Clendenning in New York Rangers organization, once again, AHL player, was probably going to get a two-way contract, be sent to the AHL. I'm not overly shocked Clendenning is left. Nicholas Malott from Columbus, once again, not overly shocked he's gone. More of an AHL forward at this point in time. Could have been a seventh defenseman, but more of an AHL forward, especially with the deep defense on the Columbus Blue Jackets. Not overly shocked he didn't get a deal. And then Andy Walensky in St. Louis, once again, depth defenseman. Not overly shocked that he didn't get a deal. And Nick Ritchie. I think Ritchie was the most surprising out of all the players who have been released off of their PTOs to not get a contract. Like I said, Nick Ritchie's a solid, at the very least, fourth, maybe third line forward. I thought he could have gotten a deal with St. Louis. The Blues wound up releasing him from his PTO, so it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Ritchie next. I still think he can be a good, solid 20, maybe 25-point player at some points, depending on where he plays and what sort of a role he gets. I think there's still some teams out there who could sign him, who could use some bottom six help on a cheaper contract, so going to be interesting to see, but Blues release him off his PTO and he's not going to get a contract with the Blues. So going to be interesting to see, but Ritchie's probably the only surprising one, I think, that have been released so far. But on top of that, Ryan Dzingel, Ollie Levy, Brandon Halverson, Peter Deliberator, Andy Walensky, Nicholas Malott, and Adam Clendenning have all been released off of their PTOs. And those are all the players on PTOs that have now been released. So those are some interesting notes there. And next we'll go over to the waiver updates. Now, Thursday began more waiver news. So players who need to clear waivers to be sent down to the minors wound up starting to be placed on waivers on Thursday. So they were placed on waivers on Thursday. We found out who was claimed Friday and who cleared. And there have been some players who have been placed on Friday. Now, as I record this video, the players who have been placed on waivers on Friday have not cleared yet. So I don't exactly know who's been taken off of waivers and if everyone's cleared. So don't exactly know that as of yet, but we'll get to all the ones that I do know first. So on Thursday, we had a handful of guys be placed on waivers. Canucks goaltender Spencer Martin, who apparently had some trade rumors surrounding him. He was placed on waivers. The Penguins signed a bunch of players onto waivers, including Jonathan Gruden, Rem Pitlick, Ty Smith, which was the surprising one, Taylor Fedun, and Xavier Ouellette. And then the Colorado Avalanche put Callahan Burke on waivers. Now, Burke easily cleared waivers for the Avalanche. Gruden, Fedun, Ouellette, all really easily cleared waivers for the Penguins. Also, Ty Smith and Rem Pitlick. I thought Smith and Pitlick would have probably gotten at least a little bit of a look from other NHL teams, so I am a little bit surprised that those two did not get a bigger NHL opportunity or a look, but for the time being, both of them have cleared waivers and they could be sent to the minors. As for Spencer Martin, he was the one lone claim, as the Columbus Blue Jackets have acquired him. This is a really good acquire, in my opinion. Apparently, there's a couple of reports that have said that Daniil Tarasov might be banged up right now, so the Jackets bring in Martin, who could probably help in the short term, and then when Tarasov gets back, Martin can go back to the AHL, go on waivers again. If he clears, he can go back and be a good solid third stringer. So, like I said, Martin's probably fringe between a third stringer and a second stringer, so it's going to be interesting to see, but I do like that claim there by the Columbus Blue Jackets to nab Spencer Martin to help replace Daniil Tarasov in the short term. As for players who were placed on waivers yesterday, I'm not exactly sure who's been claimed yet. As I said, that'll happen in a couple of hours from now. But the Colorado Avalanche placed Keane Middleton and Spencer Smallman on waivers. The New York Rangers have sent Alex Belzile, Anton Bleed, Turner Elson, Ty Emberson, Connor Mackey, and Riley Nash on waivers. The New Jersey Devils have sent Ty Weatherspoon on waivers, and the St. Louis Blues have sent Adam Gaudette on waivers. So I wouldn't expect any one of these guys to get claimed. Belzile, Nash, Mackey will probably be the most likely, but I wouldn't be shocked if there were no claims today on waivers. Late last night, it sounds like there's a couple more players who are going to be placed on waivers later today, including one Lassie Thompson, who's actually had a pretty good training camp, and a lot of Senators players were surprised that the Sens are going to waive him, given how well he's done in training camp. Thompson's a decent player, a former first-round prospect who could definitely fit on any team's third pair. So, given he's also a really cheap defenseman, I could see a couple of teams claim him. So, it's going to be interesting to see later today and early into tomorrow if Thompson winds up getting claimed. But that's another solid option that we're going to have to watch out for. But that's sort of the waiver update as of right now. I don't know who's been claimed. We'll probably know in a couple of hours from now. But at this point in time, that's all I know about the waiver wire. So, waiver wire is back, and we're going to be interested to see what other players wind up getting claimed off of waivers over the next couple of days. Going over to the injury update part of the video, we've got a couple of injury updates here. As we talked about from last time, there was a lot of injury updates. Here's a couple of injury updates that have happened. Jared Van Riemsdyk, Mika Zibanejad, Kirill Marchenko have all been cleared to play, so they're all back. The Detroit Red Wings have lost Carter Mazur to a lower body injury and Matt Luff to an upper body injury, both out for an unknown period of time. Kelly Jarnkrok has an undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day. Mason McTavish has been cleared to play. Justin Falk has a lower body injury. Kasperi Kapanen has an upper body injury, both out for an unknown period of time. Yoel Edmondson's injury has been updated. He has a hand injury that's going to keep him out the next 6 weeks. So he's going to miss the start of the season. That's a really bad blow for the Capitals, given the fact that they brought in Edmondson to be a solid third-pair defenseman. Travis Konecny's healthy. Josh Norris is healthy. Simone Benoit is healthy. Those three have all returned to regular action. Dylan Gambrell has a concussion. He's going to be out indefinitely. That's a bad injury for the Leafs. He's probably going to miss the start of the season. Sam Bennett has an undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day. Rupe Yance has an upper body injury and is out day-to-day. Jacob Pelche took a big hit in one of the preseason games against the Seattle Kraken, left holding his arm. He currently has a shoulder injury and is out indefinitely. A lot of people do think this is going to be a longer-term injury and Pelche is going to miss the start of the season, so that's a really bad blow for the Flames. Mikael Granlund has an undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day. Cole Perfetti has a hand injury and is out day-to-day. Zach Whitecloud and John Klingberg have undisclosed injuries and are out for an unknown period of time. Danny Zhilkin, Nikita Chibrikov, and Kyle Capobianco all have lower body injuries and are out day-to-day for the Jets. Cam Atkinson's been cleared to play. Andrei Vasilevskiy has a back injury that's going to keep him out the next 2 months. We'll get to more of that in a second, but that's an awful injury for the Tampa Bay Lightning. The San Jose Sharks, Kevin Labanc is out day-to-day with upper body injury. The Nate Schmidt has a lower body injury and is out day-to-day for the Jets. Mason Appleton has an undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day for the Jets. The Senators have Brady Tkachuk out with an eye injury, out for day-to-day right now. Cam York has an undisclosed injury for Philly, is out day-to-day. Jordan Kyrou has out for a lower body injury, is out day-to-day. Both Philip Zadina and Ram Shimmick both have lower body injuries. Zadina's out day-to-day, Shimmick's out for an unknown period of time. Artemi Panarin's cleared to play now for the New York Rangers. John Gibson has upper body injury and is out day-to-day. Nikolai Ehlers and Jalen Lupin have both been cleared to play. Elias Salomonson for the Jets has upper body injury, is out for an unknown period of time. Logan Brown has an undisclosed injury. He's going to be out for an indefinite period of time, so most likely will miss the start of the season. As will Roman Schmidt, who has an undisclosed injury, out for an indefinite period of time. The Boston Bruins have Jacob Zaboral, who is undisclosed injury and is out day-to-day. And that's all of the injury updates so far from the NHL. So definitely, most of these guys are out day-to-day. A couple are out for an unknown period of time. Those are going to be ones to watch out for. Indefinite period of times are only a handful of players, but those guys like Gambrell and Logan Brown are most likely going to miss the start of the season. And then there's been a couple of other injuries that could be out longer term. So going to be interested to see if that's your injury update quickly here. A quick touch here on the retired players. Cory Schneider has retired from the NHL. Schneider has been a fantastic goaltender throughout his career, playing mostly with Vancouver and the New Jersey Devils. He started his career in Vancouver, was traded to Jersey, had some pretty good seasons with New Jersey Devils, including helping them make the playoffs back, I think, in 2017 or 2018 it was. So definitely, Schneider had a fantastic career. Never did win a cup, but for a long time was a good tandem goaltender with Roberto Luongo before he was moved by the Vancouver Canucks. Played mostly in Vancouver and Jersey. He also spent a lot of time in the Islanders organization, mostly as their third stringer in the AHL. I think he only played 1 or 2 games with the Islanders, so he didn't really play overly much at the NHL level with the Islanders, but he did have a lot of success with the Devils and the Canucks as a tandem goaltender with their players. So good to see Schneider had a long, good career for the Islanders, Devils, and Canucks. But it's just sad to see him retire. So we wish the best of luck for Schneider, and hopefully he can do well in whatever's next for him. And going over to a couple of trade rumors here. So we only got a couple of trade rumors to discuss here today. First, going with the Vancouver Canucks. Recently, Frank Seravalli did say that what has been speculated for a while, and that is that the Canucks and the San Jose Sharks did have some trade discussions involving Tyler Myers and Kevin Labanc. He said that it would have been a 1-for-1 trade where Kevin Labanc would have gone to Vancouver in exchange for Tyler Myers, but the Canucks were the team that were a little bit hesitant to do it. It sounds like they wanted to keep Myers for the time being, see how the season plays out. Hopefully he can continue to be a solid top four defenseman for the Canucks. And if they're not going overly well towards the playoffs and they look like they're going to miss, maybe they move the Myers to the deadline. That's what Frank Seravalli said. The Canucks really didn't want to make that sort of a move, 1-for-1 Myers for Labanc. So it looks like the Canucks for the time being are going to keep Tyler Myers in their system, keep them as like a top 4, maybe third pair defenseman. And in time, if they're not doing overly well closer to the deadline, they can move him on their own terms. They could probably retain a decent amount of money, make it a little bit more palatable for a couple of teams. And if they're out of the playoffs, they could probably get a decent draft pick or maybe a prospect in return. So I think that's a decent enough move by the Canucks to not make the Myers or Labanc trade. They already have enough forwards, so I can see why they would not want to pull the trigger on a Myers Labanc trade. So that's a decent trade in my opinion. But I've also heard a couple of people say that the Canucks may not be done moving before the start of the season. They may try and make 1 or 2 more moves. There's a lot of talk about Spencer Martin being a trade chip before he was claimed off of waivers by the Columbus Blue Jackets. So that's not a possibility anymore. But there's definitely a couple of other players who I could see being moved. If they're not moving Myers right now, maybe they move Anthony Beauvillier, maybe they move Connor Garland. Those will probably be the guys they see because there's a lot of cheaper options on the forward group who are really doing well right now in preseason. So I wouldn't be overly shocked if the Canucks tried to make one more move to maybe move out a higher end, more high priced forward, and maybe in exchange get like a cheaper, more bottom 6 forward. So that's something I could see. So I wouldn't say the Canucks are completely done yet, but it's interesting to see that Myers, they probably want to hold on at least until deadline to see if they can get something decent in return, and that they couldn't possibly try and make one more move before the start of the season. It's going to be interesting to see. Now, next, going over to the Tampa Bay Lightning here. Vasilevskiy injury hurts them big time. Vasilevskiy is out for the next 2 months after having back surgery, which is a huge blow to the Tampa Bay Lightning team. Now, the Bolts have dealt with injuries before in the past. They've been able to recover from them. Victor Hedman's been injured before. Point and Kucherov, Stamkos at some points, Anthony Cirelli. This team's may do without injuries. They've still been a really competitive team. But forwards, they have replacements for them, and especially in the past, they're a really deep team. If a guy like Kucherov or a guy like Point were to be missing half of the season or the entire season, they had replacements. Hedman, they have defensive replacements. Vasilevskiy's completely different. He's the backbone of that team. He plays 60, 65 games a season. He doesn't get injured too often, and they don't have replacements for him. Jonas Johansson, who they brought in the offseason, who was the Avalanche's third-string goaltender last year, is the next best guy. Besides him, you have a couple of decent goalies in Alnefelt and Tompkins, who are both AHL goaltenders at this point in time and don't really have any NHL experience. So you're running in blind right now with Tampa Bay Lightning if you're in net. So there's a lot of speculation they could try and make a move because, like I said, you can make do without Point, you can make do without Kucherov. Without Vasilevskiy, it's a completely different story. If they don't make a move before the season starts and they go into the season with a guy like Johansson and Alnefelt as your two goaltenders in Tampa, there's a really likely chance that they could start the season 500 or worse before Vasilevskiy gets back. And with Ottawa, Buffalo, and Detroit all trying to get into the playoffs and leapfrog Tampa to get into the playoffs, there's a likely chance that Tampa Bay could start the season off so badly that they can't be able to climb back into the playoffs race. So it's going to be really interesting to see what the Tampa Bay Lightning do. On his recent 32 Thoughts podcast, Elliot Friedman does think that they will probably do something, even though that the Bolts are saying they probably won't. There's been a lot of talk about Dan Vladar, but Friedman says that he doesn't think Vladar will be a likely option, given the fact that the Bolts don't have a good cap situation. Remember, Vasilevskiy is only out for the next 2 months. He's not an LTIR candidate to go straight to the playoffs. So he's going to be back within the next 2.5 months. So whenever he gets back, they're going to have the space to activate him. And if they have the space to activate him, they're going to only have about $800,000 worth of room left. So in that case, they're not going to be able to bring in a Dan Vladar who's signed for the next couple of years at $2.3 million. It's just not going to work. So a lot of people do think they could go after a waiver pickup. Some people think a guy like Martin Jones could possibly be an option. A couple of other third-string goaltenders could be like an Alex Lyon in Detroit, Magnus Hellberg in Pittsburgh, Anthony Stolarz in Florida. Those guys are all making at least under $1 million, all variable in the AHL, and could be decent enough goaltenders to make do for the start of the season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I could see those guys be possible waiver pickups for the Tampa Bay Lightning. There's also some talk they could try and sign a UFA, like a Brian Elliott, who was the former backup of the Bolts, or Yaroslav Halak. There's also some talk they could try and maybe acquire a lower-end goaltender from the trade market. It's going to be interesting to see, but it sounds like the Bolts are going to be in the market for a goaltender as Vasilevskiy's out for the next 2 months. And if they don't have a good enough goaltender, because Vasilevskiy is the backbone of this team goes however much Vasilevskiy can take them. So if Vasilevskiy is not with the team for the first 2 months, there's a good chance this team could start mediocre, and that could hurt their chances long-term to make the playoffs this year. So it's going to be interesting to see, but that Vasilevskiy injury is backbreaking for the Tampa Bay Lightning, especially in a competitive Atlantic division. I'll be interested to see if they do wind up going out and getting a replacement. Going out to Toronto Maple Leafs, there's a lot of people who think right now that Calle Jarnkrok could be the odd man out in Toronto. Jarnkrok, as we talked about, has an undisclosed injury. A lot of people do think that that could be possible, but some other people do think he's being held out of training camp as being the odd man out and could be a guy who's moved. We know the Leafs need to free up around $2 million in cap space. They're most likely going to put Martin Jones on waivers, so I'll leave them about $2 million over the cap. They still could try and move, in my opinion, Timmins and Lafferty on waivers, but after the play from Timmins in the preseason, and Lafferty's actually shown some pretty good things too, I don't think the Leafs would be overly fond to be moving these two guys down to waivers, where they would most likely be claimed. So if that's the case, they could move Calle Jarnkrok. He's a decent middle six forward, had a pretty good season last year, but will probably not get top 6 minutes this year with Bertuzzi and Domi being added to the lineup. Nice having a pretty good opportunity. So I really do think that there's a strong chance that with all those guys being added, Jarnkrok doesn't really have a solid spot in the top 9 anymore. So I think there is a really likely chance that Jarnkrok gets moved. He's not overly expensive at $2.1 million. There's a lot of teams who could probably use a Milzik's forward at just over $2 million, and moving him would essentially free up a necessary cap space. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I would not overly rule out the fact that maybe the Leafs don't go on the waiver route and risk losing Lafferty and Timmins on waivers, and maybe they do try and move Calle Jarnkrok. So it's going to be interesting to see, but I would not overly shocked if the Leafs do try and move him. And lastly, with the Ottawa Senators, there's still a lot of talk around Joseph Brannstrom possibly being moved. Joseph had a fantastic preseason game a couple days ago, hitting a couple of goals. He looks really, really good. He could be upping his trade value right now, so I think there's still a likely possibility Joseph could be moved. There's still a lot of people who think the Sens could trade from the back end. Brannstrom's a likely option. He hasn't looked overly great in preseason action yet, so there's still a possibility he could be moved at $2 million. He's still a decent player. I've also seen some people say that maybe Artem Zub could be a possible trade option. In my opinion, you don't trade Zub. He has been a fantastic top four defenseman. He's worked really well. He's entering the first year of a contract extension. I don't see the Senators moving Zub, even though that would really help the cap situation. But I expect Brannstrom or Joseph to be moved in the next couple of days. The start of the season is only just over a week away, and the end of the preseason is just over a week away, like a week and a day away. So most of these teams are going to have to start making some of these moves. So like the Leafs, like the Senators, I could easily see a couple of these moves happen within the next couple of days. So going to be interesting to see, but I know Zub's name's been mentioned out there from a couple of sources, including David Pagnotta. I don't see Zub being moved. He's too big of a top piece in that top four to be moved. Even if they were to free up enough cap space, I'm still looking at Brannstrom. I'm still looking at Joseph. I know there's been some mention about Dominic Kubalik as well, but I still think he's probably going to stay as well. So personally, I still think it's either Brannstrom or Joseph to be moved. Maybe it could be Kubalik, but I don't see Zub being moved. So going to be interesting to see, but I definitely think that Brannstrom or Joseph will be moved within the next couple of days to sort of help the Senators out and give them enough cap space to sign Shane Pinto. So going to be interesting to see, but that's all I'm going to talk about for today. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. Which of the waivers, training camp cuts, PTO updates, which ones were the most surprising to you? Do you like the 4 signings? Zuccarello, Foligno, Backlund, which one do you think was the best of them? Hopefully most of these guys are not injured for an overly long period of time. Hopefully Schneider does well in retirement. Do you see the Canucks making another move before the season starts? If so, who do you think would be the guy to go? Do the Bolts add a goaltender? If so, which sort of a guy do you think they would go? Would they go with the waiver wire, free agency, or they try and make a small trade? Do the Maple Leafs move Calle Jarnkrok? If so, what sort of a team do you think could possibly acquire him? And do you see the Sens possibly moving Zub? I don't. I still think it's going to be Brannstrom or Joseph, but definitely, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts down in the comments. But that's all I'm going to talk about for today. Remember to like this video, and if you really liked it, remember to subscribe down below. I also do a blog talking about news, rumors, analysis, stuff like that, so definitely check that out. I'll leave a link down in the description below, and I can't wait to see you guys all for the next video. See you guys soon.